Revealed, 7. Sinister rules park rangers must follow to survive the haunted Rocky Mountains. The dry wind howled through the trees, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. In the distance, the craggy peaks of the Rocky Mountains loomed, shadowy and forbidding, whispering secrets that sent chills down the spine. Some say the mountains harbor a spirit, one that punishes those who disrespect her. But Sarah, a newly appointed park ranger, scoffed at such superstitions until that night that it was her third week into the job, the isolation settling on her like an unwelcome shroud. She left the chaos of the city behind, chasing peace in a small community steeped in eerie folklore. But that peace felt fragile, especially now, as she stood alone in the park ranger station, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. The townsfolk exchanged nervous glances, their friendly facades cracking when tales took a darker turn. Disappearances. Or worse. Only the bravest would dare to probe further. That night, while exploring the dimly lit station, Sarah stumbled upon an old, weathered notebook. Its cover was faded and cracked, as if it had absorbed the darkness of every shaded corner it had inhabited. With trembling hands, she opened it. Each page contained chilling sinister rules for rangers, tales of those who defied them vanishing into the woods, their screams swallowed by the trees. Rule 1. Never wander off the marked trails. The first story told of a ranger who ignored warnings. He was never found. Just whispers of laughter echoed in the night as the wind carried his last cries. A cold sweat trickled down Sarah's back. Rule 2. Respect the wildlife. The second chronicled the tragic fate of a man who shot a bear that had wandered too close to camp. No one could ever explain the way he just vanished. A shiver raced through Sarah's body as the words twisted in her mind, signaling something very wrong. Suddenly, the world outside seemed to pulse with life. Shadows darted just beyond her vision. Was it her imagination? The place felt alive, electric with something sinister. A sense of being watched slithered down her spine. Her heart raced, but she wasn't going to give in. She was here to protect the visitors, to talk about the wonders of nature. She steeled herself, but unease tightened like a vice. Before she could dive deeper into the book, her radio crackled to life. A frantic report came in: a family camping nearby had gone missing. Panic gripped Sarah. Instinct flared. Something was deeply rooted in these mountains, tied to the tales that had haunted her since day one. She dashed out into the night, the echoing silence deafening. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined, she tried to alert her superiors. But they dismissed her, waving her worry off as paranoia. Focus on your shift, Sarah, they said, voices dripping with condescension. Left alone with her fears, she sensed a growing dread. The shadows were thickening, encircling her. She couldn't shake the feeling that her very presence had stirred something. The moonlight faltered, and she returned to the woods. As the trees whispered collusions around her, their gnarled limbs seemed to close in, breaths of fate unknown caressing her neck. She flipped to the final page of the notebook, the last rule beckoning her like a dark enchantment. Rule 7. Trust no one. Before she could digest its meaning, a hollow rustle from the underbrush caught her attention. Heart pounding, she turned, eyes wide in terror. Something lurked just beyond the trees. The wind shrieked as icy fingers brushed against the nape of her neck. Sarah felt that the forest was alive with forces far beyond her control, and now, they were closing in on her. The underbrush trembled as something stepped closer, snapping twigs like fragile bones underfoot. Sarah's breath hitched, her instincts screaming at her to run, to flee back to the ranger station. But she stood frozen, an invisible force rooting her in place, lacing fear with fascination. The shadows twisted, elongating and shifting like dark tendrils reaching out through the night. Show yourself. Her voice cracked, a battle cry swallowed by the overwhelming silence surrounding her. Yet the only response was a low, throaty growl, echoing from within the depths of the trees. Her skin prickled with dread, the air thick and suffocating. It didn't sound human. Was it a bear? A wolf? Or something far worse? Panic surged in her chest, pounding like a drum. She glanced at the flickering flashlight in her hand, its beam faltering as though reflecting her own wavering composure. Sarah's gaze darted around, searching for any sign of movement. Her heart raced. Rule 1 screamed in her head. The marked trails were her safety, and she had abandoned them. Had she truly been foolish enough to stir the very spirit the locals feared? The rustling morphed into a cacophony, and a chill settled into her bones. Shadows danced, closing in, their edges shimmering like visions from a nightmare. That when she saw it, an ethereal figure, pale and indistinct, flitting between the trees. It paused, locking its hollow eyes on her. A shudder swept through Sarah as a familiar face haunted her thoughts, a missing ranger, long rumored to have vanished into these same woods. Help me. The phantom's whisper echoed, thin and desperate. Wait. She managed to gasp, but the vision faded as quickly as it had appeared, dissolving like morning mist under the rising sun. Confusion and fear wrapped around her like a vice grip. She stumbled back, her throat tight. That figure was a reminder of the stories, the rangers who had never returned. Had they ended up here, lost in the malignant embrace of the forest? Determined not to join them, she spun around, racing deeper into the woods, heart pounding in rhythm to her terror. Branches clawed at her clothes, tearing fabric like her sanity. Was she running towards safety or doom? Underneath the rush of adrenaline, though, her mind twisted. She still had the notebook. The answers might lurk within those pages, urging her to unveil more sinister prohibitions. Breath quickening, she fumbled for it as she ran, almost tripping in her haste. The radio crackled again, but the words were muffled. It echoed in her ears like a warning from the shadows. Sarah, come in. Sarah, family's not alone, need help. The connection sputtered and died, plunging her into a void of silence. The haunting growls morphed into a relentless melody pulsating through the trees. She felt them watching, the eyes of the forest, waiting to prey on her vulnerabilities. Not just her, the radio mentioned the family, a whole unit in danger. Within the confines of this eerie prison, she grasped the gravity of the moment. Remembering Rule 7 flickered in her mind, but it didn't just mean distrust of her colleagues, it extended to every presence lurking in these shadows. But whom could she trust if she couldn't even rely on her own senses? Suddenly, the darkness engulfed her. A scream tore through the forest, leaving her trembling, heart racing, caught between fear and resolve. Was it the family? Or was it the spirit that stalked them? Sarah felt the forest press in around her, folding like a gentle clasp around her throat, and realized with a crushing weight she wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was hunting for the truth. What had she unleashed in her defiance? As she ran, every twisted path and muffled sound merged into an impending doom. Endlessly searching through the dense darkness, she felt the eyes on her again, too familiar, almost affectionate. Could they be the ones who'd vanished? Were they watching, waiting, drawing her nearer to an unthinkable fate? Bursting through the trees, she stumbled into a clearing, her breath ragged. The moon illuminated her surroundings, revealing her ahead the family, but they weren't alone. They hovered near a figure, shrouded in shadow, the kind of darkness that spoke of death. A chilling thought clouded her mind. What if she wasn't the only one drawn to the secrets of the mountains? Whatever was here, whatever haunted the woods, it was not done with her yet. And neither was the forest. The moon hung high, a watching eye in a sea of darkness. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps as she took a shaky step into the clearing. The sight before her sent a tremor of terror through her bones. The family stood frozen, their faces pale and their expressions etched with fear. A figure loomed over them, its outline barely discernible, like a heavy fog clinging to the ground, swirling and beckoning. Get away from them. Sarah shouted, the command ripped from her throat, desperate and unsteady. The shadows around the figure twitched, responding to her words with an eerie quiet that filled her with dread. They shifted, gathering, like insects drawn to a light, and Sarah felt a pulse of energy in the air, the kind that accompanies a storm. The family turned to her, their eyes wide with panic. Please, help us. One of the children cried. It was a thin voice, breaking under the weight of fear. The echoes of Sarah's own dread tinged her senses. Stay back. She yelled again, but in her heart, she feared she was too late. As she moved closer, drawn by that innate need to save them, the shadowed figure turned its hollow face toward her. Recognition surged within her, a face she had seen in the worn notebook, the drawing of a ranger who had gone missing years before. This was not a rescue, this was an invitation to an unspeakable nightmare. Help me, the shadow rasped, voice a haunting whisper that sent chills prickling at her skin. It raised an arm, a gesture meant to pull her closer. Tendrils of darkness slithered toward her, warm and inviting, yet deeply unsettling. Don't! She screamed. Run! But the family remained still, entranced by whatever malevolent force held them captive. The air thickened, whirling like a storm around them. Sarah's instincts screamed that she needed to act before it was too late. Clutching the notebook, she recalled the warning scrawled in its margins, the rules for survival that had seemed so abstract until now. No contact in the dark. Do not engage with lingering spirits. But what did that mean when the very spirit before her had once been a colleague? With every second, the darkness grew more palpable, swirling around her like a living thing. The forest came alive with whispers, growing louder and louder until they clashed into a cacophony surrounding her. It was a relentless chant, a chorus of voices belonging to the lost, echoing the fears and secrets of the woods that longed to swallow her whole. The family took hesitant steps forward, pulled by invisible strings. How could this be happening? Wasn't she supposed to be the protector? The one who brought them home? In a flash of clarity, she thrust the notebook into the air. This belongs to me. You can't take them. Tension electrified the air, and for a moment, a split second, it felt as if the forest held its breath, gauging her defiance. The shadows flickered, hesitant, then, the child cried out again, a piercing scream that shattered the silence, just as a surge of darkness erupted from the figure. It lashed out, sending branches snapping and the earth shuddering beneath them. Sarah was thrown backward, the world tilting as she fought to keep her grip on reality. She hit the ground hard, gasping for breath, the weight of the forest crashing down around her. As she scrambled to her feet, the family vanished from her sight, swallowed by the dark again. No. Where are you? Panic flooded through her, urgency clawing at her mind. The creatures of the forest began to stir. She felt the eyes on her once more, the weight of all those who had been claimed by the woods pressing down on her chest. They were not just watching, they were waiting, urging her to make a choice. But what choice would lead to survival? With a frantic gaze, she scanned the woods, desperate for a path back into the unknown. She had to find them. But as the shadows thickened and whispered her name, a cold realization settled over her. This forest was hungry for her time, her fears, her very soul. Had she truly stirred its restless spirits, or had they simply been waiting for her all along? The ground trembled beneath her feet as the faint sounds of laughter echoed, twisted, mocking. And for the first time, Sarah felt the crushing weight of the truth. She was not just a ranger in search of truth, she was another prey in a game far older than her, and the forest was hungry. What will it demand next? The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the chilling laughter that ricocheted off the crumbling rocks of the mountain. Sarah felt her heart thumping, a frantic drumbeat threatening to drown her sanity. They were no longer just shadows. They breathed, they watched, and the forest's hunger seemed to take shape all around her. Find them, find them. She repeated the words like a mantra, forcing her trembling legs to move despite the weight of dread pressing down on her shoulders. Yet each step felt like wading through thick mud, the shadowy tendrils creeping ever closer. The whispers grew louder, a tide of despair and madness crashing in her ears. Suddenly, the clearing opened up, revealing the remnants of a once thriving campsite. A fire pit, cold and dark, stood at the center surrounded by a scattering of tattered tents, their flaps swaying and rustling like ghostly flags. A shiver of recognition ran through her. This was where she and her fellow rangers had camped years ago. Memories flooded back, laughter, stories, nights filled with warmth. But now it felt tainted, twisted by the forest's sinister grip. "Come back." A desperate voice echoed, pulling her from the past. It was the child again, a flickering beacon amidst the dark. Panic surged within her, clawing at her insides. She had to find them. She had to. Sarah. The shadows shifted, morphing into something grotesque. They danced and coiled, becoming faces twisted in agony, reaching out with hands that pleaded and threatened all at once. "Join us." "No." She screamed, more at herself than the restless spirits. She wouldn't join them. She would not give in. She turned toward the echo of the child's voice, willing her feet to break free of the terror wrapping around her. "Over here." It came again, but it was weaker. Fading. "Hurry." Her heart raced as she barreled through the underbrush, branches tearing at her clothes and scratching her skin. A quick glance over her shoulder revealed the figures swirling behind her, faces shifting in and out of focus, stirring wild, chaotic emotions within her. They weren't just spirits, they were memories, lost hopes now entangled with the darkness, begging her to acknowledge them. "Please, don't." She shouted despite her chilling fear. "Let them go." The shadows only laughed in response, a chorus of malicious delight swelling within the woods. "Why fight?" they whispered. "We can protect you." "Protect?" The thought sent bile rising in her throat. The forest didn't protect. It consumed. It craved submission, her surrender. No. Her eyes darted around, searching for a sign, a direction, anything but the oppressive doom she felt closing in. She spotted abandoned tents twisted and broken. One stood apart, canvas still intact, as if it defied the chaos of the forest. Rushing toward it, she felt her breath hitch. As she reached the tent, the low hum of the whispers shifted to a haunting scream that twisted her insides. She turned, eyes wild. The shapes were converging on her, gliding closer, drawn to her resolve. "Sarah." The voice from inside the tent was hushed, bare, haunting. It was a call she couldn't ignore. Something primal in her surged. Yanking the flap aside, she fell into the shadowy interior, gasping. It felt different, cool, calm, alive. But the shadows pressed at the edges, writhing like serpents throughout the tent. She couldn't stay here long. With her heart pounding in her ears, Sarah glanced around and gasped. There, in the corner, lay the forgotten remnants of old ranger gear. A flashlight, a set of maps hunched in the half-light. This was what she needed. Suddenly, the air thickened, pressing down. The laughter erupted again, echoing mockingly around her. "You can't escape, Sarah, we are part of you now." The flashlight flickered ominously as she picked it up. Had the spirits already taken root in her mind, muddling her thoughts? No. She cried, resolve solidifying. She would light the way. She would fight back. As she turned it on, a beam sliced through the darkness. With a single flicker, the whispers screeched, a cacophony of rage and fear. The shadows recoiled, but only for a moment, a small victory in a battle she wasn't yet close to winning. "Now, let us find them," she whispered to herself, stepping toward the tent flap. The light would guide her. In that moment, she felt the pulse of the forest shift beneath her feet. Would the flashlight keep the darkness at bay, or was she fated to stumble into its embrace once more? With the chaotic whispering growing louder, the setting sun cast a long shadow across the ground. What horrors awaited her outside? The moment Sarah stepped out of the tent, the wind buffeted her, carrying with it the sense of damp earth and something rancid. Fear gripped her throat, tightening like a noose. The forest felt alive, seething with an unholy energy. The whispers slithered around her, creeping beneath her skin. Holding the flashlight tightly, she swept the beam across the clearing. Shadows danced, mocking her courage as they flickered in and out of view. She could still hear the child's voice, but it was weaker now, a mere echo lost in the cacophony of madness surrounding her. "Come find us, where are you?" she shouted back, every syllable a plea wrapped in desperation. Follow, taking a deep breath, she moved deeper into the trees, each step a test against the shadows biting at her heels. The flashlight beam carved a path through the darkness, illuminating gnarled branches adorned with what looked like eerie figures, half-formed faces pressing against the bark. Each was a mask of despair, twisting and pleading, and she shuddered, believing they might reach out and pull her into their depths. Panic flooded her chest. Hadn't she just escaped their tendrils? Keep going, she urged herself, ignoring the knot of dread coiling tighter. The ground sank beneath her feet as she trudged through the underbrush, the flashlight flickering erratically. It felt like the forest was fighting against her, wanting her to succumb, to give in and join the endless darkness. Every sound, crunching leaves, snapping branches, was magnified, weaving a spine-tingling symphony of terror. "Sarah!" The voice was sharper now, infused with urgency. She recognized it, and her heart raced. The child. She pushed forward, limbs heavy as lead. "Stay close," she called, the words barely escaping her lips. The light suddenly sputtered, dimming to a mere whisper of brightness. Shadows lunged at her, their laughter rising to a screeching crescendo. "You won't find them," they taunted, surrounding her. "No," she cried, feeling her resolve waver against the onslaught. "You aren't real. Are we? Or are you?" The light flickered once more, illuminating a path ahead, a narrow gorge carved between two massive boulders. She hesitated, but the soft sound of sobbing lured her closer. She felt propelled by instinct, inching toward the fissure. "Please help me." Without thinking, she stepped into the abyss. The darkness enveloped her. The walls confined her. Her breath quickened, her pulse racing as the whispers grew ever louder, pressing against her mind. Join us, then." She saw it, a pale figure crouched at the base of the rocky wall, hands covering its face. "The child. Don't look away. Please." The voice was laced with terror, mixing with the forest's taunts. "Hold on," she shouted, scrambling closer, fingers brushing the rough stone. But even as she reached out, the shadows surged forward, eager to swallow her whole. In a blink, the once familiar wails turned into manic laughter, and the air crackled with despair. "No!" she screamed, pulling against the ancient force that tried to drag her back. "Leave her." The child's plea cut through the chaos, piercing the veil of madness. She lunged forward, tackling the figure, yanking it toward the light. Yet as the shadows clawed at her, she realized with horror the figure was dissolving in her grip, slipping away like smoke. "Help me. Help us." "No." She tore her eyes from the phantom before her, determined to break the grip of the forest. The flashlight brightened for one flickering moment, revealing the gaunt visage of her companions, lost, hollow, and trapped within the darkness. As the last of the voice faded into the chaos, Sarah felt the shadows tighten around her, whispers swelling into one dreaded word. Sarah, would she too become just another shade in this wretched forest? With heart racing, she squared her shoulders against the tide, desperation fueling her next choice. What would she risk to reclaim her friends and escape the darkness? As Sarah's breath fogged in the chill, she spun to flee from the claims of the shadows. They gnawed at her ankles, talons stretching into the darkness, beckoning her to surrender. Her heart thundered, she could feel the thumping resonating in her skull. The flashlight flickered, a pathetic heartbeat against the encroaching gloom. "Where do I go?" she whispered, terror lodged in her throat. "What do I do?" The forest had morphed into a labyrinth of despair. She began to run, each footfall a desperate prayer, her path twisting in anguish as branches clawed at her clothes and skin. She had to find a way out, but the trees closed in, their bark seeming to pulse with something unnatural, as if the woods themselves were breathing. Please. She croaked, her voice swallowed by a ravenous silence. Help us. The child's voice coiled around her again, lacing through the trees. It sent shivers down her spine. Help us, Sarah. She skidded to a halt, her sides heaving. I'm coming. She cried, the promise slipping from her lips like a prayer. A surge of determination coursed through her, sharp and bright against the overwhelming dread. Turning, she beelined toward a flicker of movement, shadows blurring into a figure, perhaps the child. But she quickly learned the truth. It retreated deeper into the thicket, beckoning her to chase once more. The whispers rose, a sinister symphony asking her to abandon all hope, to dissolve into despair alongside her friends. Stay with me. She shouted into the dark, the light sputtered, flickered out completely, and an agonizing panic threatened to crush her. Now enveloped in raw darkness, she clawed at the air, feeling the space around her, a blind woman in a world that had gone silent. She could hear her heartbeat, muffled thuds overshadowed by whispers that promised terrible things. Join us. They danced on the edges of her sanity, tender yet feral. A stone wall against her back offered a moment's grounding. She could feel roughness beneath her palm. It felt real, solid, unlike the snaring shadows. Gripping it tightly, she focused on the whispers, their anger now out of focus. In the distance a low growl of promises turned threats. Help us. It sounded closer now. Was it the child? Or was it a trick? Driven by instinct, Sarah pressed against the wall, seeking a cave or fissure where she could hide. The sobs grew louder, a mournful chorus wrapped in sorrow. Where are you? She dared ask the darkness, then followed the sound. I'm coming. Stumbling forward, she felt the cold stone shift, like a door cracking open, and the sobs intensified. She pushed through, desperate to follow the sound, to break free from the chains that held her. Suddenly, she was drawn into a small clearing, where glimmers of moonlight pierced through the canopy. It painted the ground in silver, illuminating something that made her stomach lurch. A pile of rusted metal and shattered memories scattered beneath the ghastly whispers. And there, amongst the debris, lay her friends' belongings, ruptured tents and shredded t-shirts, all marred with dirt and grime, the stench of decay thickening the air. No. The realization crashed into her like a wave. They hadn't simply vanished, the forest had consumed them. Sobbing against the revelation, she stumbled backward, the sudden loss knocking her breath away. The shadows lurched toward her, eager to swallow her misery. The once familiar child's voice morphed into a cacophony, taunting, mocking, urging her to abandon all hope. Then, a flicker blinked in the corner of her vision, a flicker of lights that danced like fireflies, a guide through the storm of despair. Sarah. Was it the child? Or something far more sinister? Trembling, she took a hesitant step toward the lights, her instincts firing against the deep well of terror. Hope and fear twisted together, urging her on. What if she faced something worse than shadows? Would the choice boil down to light or darkness? In that instant, she realized she was not just seeking her friends, she was fighting for her own soul. The light flickered again, beckoning her. Into the unknown, the promise of salvation, or perhaps the ultimate demise. Could she risk it all, or was the darkness ready to claim another victim? The voices whispered deadly secrets, urging her on. Join us. With her heart racing, Sarah plunged forward, compelled to discover what lay ahead. Sarah stumbled toward the twinkling lights, her heart pounding like a war drum against the stillness. Each flicker taunted her resolve, a hypnotic dance drawing her deeper into the heart of the nightmare. The air grew heavier, thick with anticipation, and her breath came in jagged gasps. In that moment, she could almost hear the churning whispers, figures flickering and weaving amidst the shadows, weaving their own tales of despair. Come closer. The laughter of the forest echoed, sinister and sweet, tantalizing her. She felt the sting of tears pooling in her eyes, still brimming with the image of her friends' belongings scattered like fallen soldiers. Stay together. The echo of their laughter from days past reverberated in her mind, a memory tainted with a bitter aftertaste. She couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was alive, laughing at her turmoil as her feet slipped on uneven ground. The lights shimmered, each pulse quickening in intensity. Were they her salvation, or just another trap? Terror clawed at her gut, urging her to turn back, but something deeper rooted her to the spot. As she drew nearer, the lights no longer flitted. They hovered in midair, almost crystalline, glowing with an otherworldly hunger. Her fingers reached out, trembling, yearning to touch the cool, inviting glow. But a voice interrupted, sharp and penetrating. "Sarah." It was a whisper, distinctly human, yet distorted, the syllables twisted like branches in the wind. The lights dimmed, glowing dimmer, leaving shadows heavy with dread. "Who are you?" she gasped, panic tightening its grip. "Where are my friends?" The voice echoed, "The forest knows it remembers." Before Sarah could compose herself, the ground beneath her trembled. She felt heat radiate, not from the lights, but from the earth, a pulse, like a heartbeat. "Join us, or be lost forever." The shadows twitched with life around her, their whispers morphing into shrieks of despair. Suddenly the lights exploded, cascading around her in shards of brilliance before extinguishing back to darkness. She stumbled, her vision clouding, mere glimpses of nightmares wrapping tighter around her. Sinking to her knees, she reached for them, fists digging into the dirt. "No!" she screamed, desperation boiling over. She saw things, blurry forms trying to escape, clawing at the soil, faces morphing into familiar shapes only to dissolve back into shadows. "Help!" Her voice fractured, agony spilling over into the night. "Please!" Then she felt it. A surge, something cool moving through her, electric as it combined with her fear, weaving in and out of her veins. The ground roared to life, and the shadows leaned closer at her cry, their twisted mouths forming a grin. Could she fight back? Was it worth it to resist? With a newfound clarity, Sarah gritted her teeth, rising. The memories of her friends fueled her fury. She cried out, drawing strength from her anguish, "You won't take me." A gust of wind blasted through the clearing, howling as if the forest were expelling her defiance. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and in that fleeting breath, she took off running, not toward the fading light but away from the eerie whispers craving her submission, but they followed, relentless. "Stay with us, stay forever." She sprinted forward, branches whipping her face, an ever-repeating cycle of fear choked with desperation. The trees surged forward, looming, their twisted limbs branch-like fingers ready to snap shut. And then, through the chaos, she spotted it, a narrow path veiled by dense foliage, beckoning. Was it a way out? Or another deception? "Sarah!" A chorus of voices cried in unison, growing louder. They were close. Too close. Gathering every ounce of strength, she dashed toward the unknown, the path leading deeper, enticing her into the very heart of darkness. What awaited her, she couldn't fathom. But one thing was clear, she hadn't just plunged into the shadows. She was climbing into a living nightmare, a place where hope dimmed faster than any flickering light. Would the path lead her to freedom, or deeper into the sinister breath of the forest? Branches clawed at Sarah's skin, leaving thin trails of crimson in their wake as she raced forward. The oppressive darkness swirled around her like a living entity, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Each hurried breath felt like a betrayal, her chest constricting as panic set in. "Where are you?" she shouted into the void, hoping against hope that one of her friends would respond. But only the forest answered, the trees creaking and groaning as if they relished her torment. The voices she had heard moments ago began to morph, oscillating into anguished wails, echoing from unseen mouths. She pressed onward, heart racing, feet pounding against the unforgiving ground. The path seemed to twist unnaturally, spiraling into darkness with no end in sight. Flickering shadows conquered her peripheral vision, coiling around her like tendrils, grasping for her sanity. She could almost feel their icy fingers trailing along her spine. Desperation engulfed her. She couldn't think of giving in. She forced herself to remember those she loved, the faces of her friends, their laughter, now haunting reminders of her plight. Abruptly, she stumbled and fell, the world tilting around her. Dirt splattered onto her hands as she fought to regain her footing, breath hitching in fear. Was she celebrating only to meet her demise? Flashes of shadowy shapes appeared in front of her, rushing to meet her with swift movements. She kicked up dirt as she launched herself away, ignoring the piercing ache in her leg. Sarah! That voice again, a sinister echo of familiarity. It was followed by a haunting chorus, all whispering her name in a chilling harmony. The shadows intensified, swirling and deepening like storm clouds concealing the moon. Please stop! She shouted, though her voice shook, trailing off into a whisper of dread. The haunting whispers were relentless, curling into her mind, fusing with her fears. The darkness tugged at the edges of her thoughts, a weight pressing down, threatening to smother her hope. The path opened up suddenly into a small clearing, a stark contrast to the oppressive thicket. Barely breathing, she looked around. Symbols carved into the trees, stark white against the bark, glowed ominously in the dim light. They looked like ancient runes, unfamiliar yet eerily instinctive, a language older than time. What is this? She whispered, stepping close to one of the trees. A shiver coursed through her. The tree trembled, a vibration that coursed through her bones. Each symbol radiated an energy, a sense of foreboding. The air buzzed, thickening with static. A voice, smooth and chilling, broke through the thickness. You've seen us, you've come closer. Sarah whipped around, terror washing over her as silhouettes materialized, shapes vaguely resembling her friends. Their faces were warped, skin stretched over hollow cheeks, eyes dark voids that glinted with malice. What have you done to them? She screamed, the words ripping through her throat. Her hands balled into fists, fury igniting her fear. You must join us, one figure hissed, a twisted grin splitting its face. The forest demands it. No. I want tea. Her heart thundered violently, pounding against her ribs like a caged animal desperate to escape. The shadows lunged forward, the clearing now pressing in around her, closing like a trap. She spun, searching for another way out, but the tall trees swayed ominously, creating an impenetrable wall. The voice came again, softer this time, coaxing. You cannot fight us, Sarah. You belong to the night. Just as despair threatened to consume her, she caught sight of a flash of movement, a figure darting through the periphery. Hope flickered inside her as she set her gaze on it. Is that you? Help me. She called out, her voice collapsing into a breathless gasp. But as the figure stepped into view, the clearing shivered, and reality trembled like a marionette on its strings. What she saw next sent her mind spiraling into chaos. Not all who wander are lost, the figure warned, its voice echoing through the suffocating darkness. As it spoke, the shadows surged forward, ready to claim her, ready to pull her down into the abyss. But what lay behind the figure? Would it help her escape, or lead her into an even deeper nightmare? Sarah's breath hitched as the figure stepped into the light, a cruel parody of familiarity. It wore a face she knew, but stitched together in jarring ways, eyes too big, a mouth that opened too wide. A horror, an abomination formed from her memories. Lily. The name escaped her lips like a desperate prayer, trembling with disbelief. What happened to you? Lily, or whatever twisted version of her former friend this was, tilted its head. Help you? It laughed, the sound hollow and chilling, echoing in the clearing. You don't understand, Sarah. We belong to the forest now. The shadows pulsed like breathing entities, pushing closer, the cold wrapping around Sarah like chains. No. You're wrong. She screamed, panic flooding her voice. You're still in there. Fight it. The familiar shape had transformed into a horror, tugging at the edges of her sanity. The deceitful laughter faded, replaced by dissonant whispers that echoed through the clearing, growing in intensity. Join us, the voices urged, a symphony of torment wrapping tighter and tighter around her thoughts. You can't escape. You are one of us now. Desperate to break free, Sarah turned from Lily's grotesque features, seeking the darkness beyond the clearing, but the shadows shifted, dark figures pulling her gaze back, taunting her, claiming her. The trees cracked like ribs, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Only sacrifice can appease the forest, the echoing voice claimed again. You must make a choice. Adrenaline surged through her. Choice. What choice could exist in this nightmare? Sarah closed her eyes, heart racing as she tried to block out the insidious whispers crawling into her mind. What do I have to do? She shouted, her voice tremulous yet defiant. Embrace the darkness, feel it awaken. Or remain lost forever, trapped in the shadows, the voice prompted, seductive and unnerving. The clearing pulsed with energy, a malignant force testing her resolve. She opened her eyes, the visions of her friends and family flashing through her mind, filling her with a desperate hope. Above the whispers, she shouted, I will never belong to you. The shadows recoiled momentarily, confusion flickering among them like scattered ashes caught in a wind. But then, a wave of darkness rushed toward her like a living creature, sharp and biting, bringing ice into her bones. For every denial, a worse fate awaits your friends, it hissed, the words wrapping around her heart like a leash. Images surged within her, Lily shrieking, writhing in the depths of the forest, her essence being devoured, replaced by shadows. Stop. Please. Sarah pleaded, knees buckling. She couldn't do this. Not to her. You must decide quickly, the figure warned, eyes glinting. Will they survive, or will they join us? Suddenly, a chilling scream pierced through the night, a sound that felt like it was tearing the fabric of reality. It resonated with her core. Sarah. A voice echoed amidst the chaos, familiar yet distant. Jake. Her heart seized at the sound of his name. Was he out here? The shadows lunged again, closer and closer, but something cracked within her, the weight of the choice pressing down. It was a moment of clarity. She wouldn't abandon them. She wouldn't succumb. Sarah shot to her feet, fueled by the urgency swelling within her. I'll find them. No matter what. As the words left her mouth, the ground shook violently, the ancient runes shimmered ominously, chaos erupting around her. The trees swayed, groaning in defiance, shadows whipping around her like furious animals. Claiming victory? The voice crooned, but she could feel it trembling. It didn't like her resistance. In the maelstrom of darkness, a light flickered eerily in the shadows beyond. The fleeting image of Jake came into view again, laughing but distorted, like Lily taunting her, but beneath the laughter was a plea. Help me, Sarah. With a surge of determination, she dashed toward the flicker, but the shadows snatched at her heels, their whispers rising to a frenzied pitch. What will it cost you? They hissed, a haunting chant swelling. Every ounce of her body screamed in warning as terror surged once more. But she couldn't turn back now. She needed to confront whatever lay ahead, whatever awaited her if she aimed to save her friends. The thick darkness rose to consume her, but she stepped forward, heart hammering, into the unknown. Help me, Jake's voice echoed again, just a whisper in the overwhelming void. As she moved deeper into the shadows, a promise ignited within her. I will save you, but in that moment, she could feel the forest anticipate her fear, and the wrongness of her resolve seep through the air like poison. Was she truly ready for what the depths of this darkness had in store? In that moment, shadows tightened around her, and she realized, she might be the one that would awaken the forest's true rage. The air crackled with an electric tension as Sarah plunged deeper into the swirling shadows. It felt like stepping into a nightmare, the very ground trembling under her feet, as if the forest itself was alive with anticipation. The distant echoes of Jake's voice pierced through the chaos, a haunting reminder of why she had to keep going. Help me, she pushed aside her growing dread and sprinted forward, the darkness enveloping her, pressing in like a vice. Each heartbeat reverberated in her ears, a frantic rhythm propelling her into the unknown. You will not claim me. She shouted defiantly, though her voice wavered under the weight of the laughter that erupted from the trees around her. Join us, the forest chorused, the voices twisting into a melody of despair that echoed through the shadows, clawing at her mind. With every step, she could feel the presence of the lost moving beside her, shades that swirled and flickered like distant memories, tempting her surrender. There has to be a way. She gasped, her breath quickening as she neared a darkness that felt colder, more menacing. And then, she saw it, a glow up ahead, faint yet undeniable, pulsing with urgency. Hope sparked within her, igniting her courage as she raced toward the light. "Jake!" she called, voice breaking. "I'm coming." Bursting into a small clearing, the glow revealed itself as a circle of blinding light encased in a shimmering mist. And within it vaguely familiar figures. A twist of terror made her stomach turn. As she stepped closer, shadows coiled around her feet, hissing as if trying to drag her back. But nothing could stop her, not now. "Sarah!" Jake's voice rang out again, stronger this time, piercing the madness. She ran toward it, the mist curling around her as she plunged into the light. Familiar faces emerged from the haze, her colleagues, trapped yet alive, their eyes wide with fear. "Get away from them!" Sarah shouted, muscles straining as she fought to keep the shadows at bay. The forest roared its discontent, branches snapping like whips, a storm of darkness swirling around them. "You can't save them. They are ours." The shadows taunted, voices rising to a fever pitch. Desperation fueled her as she grasped for the memories of her friends, the laughter they had shared, the bonds they had forged. "No. You cannot take them." Embracing every ounce of determination in her heart, she reached out toward Jake, anchoring herself in his gaze. "Listen to me. You have to fight," she cried, desperation lending heat to her voice. "We won't let you go. We are stronger together." For a moment, the shadows faltered, swirling in confusion, and she saw it, the flicker of recognition in Jake's eyes, the spark of resistance. The air shifted, something crackling with potential like a storm about to break. "You have to help us. Remember who you are," she urged, feeling the weight of her own fear melt away, replaced by an unyielding hope. One by one, her friends slowly emerged from the shroud of shadows, their faces steeling into determination. A collective energy buzzed, a fierce resolve radiating outward. "We'll fight!" Jake shouted, grounding his footing in the earth. "Together!" The trees roared in displeasure, trembling against the wind. But they had awakened something more powerful, their unity. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her as the mist began to shimmer in response to their bravery, pushing against the shadows that had once held them captive. The forest's monstrous hold weakened, its menacing whispers dwindling into frantic howls as the light expanded, swallowing the darkness inch by inch. "Now! Push forward!" she shouted, the energy of their combined wills amplifying her strength. With renewed vigor, they charged into the heart of the light, eyes gleaming with determination. The shadows shrieked, retreating as the warmth engulfed them, pulling them away like a tide. As they sprinted into the light, Sarah felt the forest shake beneath their feet. Time slowed, and for a moment, as they stepped through the glow, the cacophony faded into silence. She could feel warmth on her skin, a promise of safety. As they broke through the other side, the cold grip of despair shattered, the sun burst through the canopy above, a radiant illumination that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. Together, breathless but alive, Sarah and her friends stumbled into an open glade. They fell to their knees, gasping for air, hearts racing not just from fear but from the undeniable power of the bonds they had forged. They had escaped, not just from the shadows but from despair itself. Yet behind them, the whispers still lingered in the light, a reminder of the darkness that thrived within the forest. But Sarah understood now the power of connection. The fight for each other was stronger than the shadows they had once feared. While the forest thrummed with its secrets, it had not defeated them. They had survived, and as they emerged into the soft glow of dawn, Sarah knew they would not forget. Each of them would carry the tale, the warning to all who roamed the haunting Rocky Mountains. As they stumbled back towards safety, the first light of day spilled over the peaks, casting long shadows that blended into the morning mist. They would heal, they would remember, and they would thrive, but one lesson would remain etched in their hearts: never turn your back on the dark. Now, as you've made it to the end of this thrilling tale, remember to keep the adventure alive. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss a single story. Smash the like button now to help us feed the algorithm and keep the momentum going. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending, and wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means the world, and only true fans recognize the importance of standing together.